it's time now to introduce the keynote speaker of today's educational session. We as Connected People Toastmasters Club are very privileged and honored to have Bill Vardas with us today. Bill is a seasoned speaker and member of Toastmasters International last 6 years. His leadership speeches present practical tools through real events and his own big experience. Bill currently is leading a successful property management company. Bill today will speak about leadership demystified. So for sure, there is a difference between a leading position and a real leadership. We will explore today this difference. What is it to be leading just a team or being a leader? What defines a successful leader? And this workshop will really focus on explaining what leadership really is and the elements that define that. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome Bill to explain us on this very interesting topic. Bill, all is yours.
Thank you, Padelis. Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Bill Vardas, and I'm really privileged to be here today with you. And thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for listening. Yes, leadership. Such a strong word, eh? And we find leadership in everywhere in our daily lives: work, politics, history, social movements, our community, and even here at Toastmasters, we're asked to be club officers and district officers, and we have leadership projects as our curriculum in education. Leadership is everywhere, and it means so many things. You know, every time you utter the word leadership, especially when you're in front of a large audience, it's like a photograph. 1,000 different images and words and meanings that come to mind. And that's because the word leadership means different things to different people. And in fact, the interesting thing is that many people have the wrong understanding of what leadership really is. So we're here today to demystify all that and to really understand what the word leadership means. So, what is leadership? Well, let's start with saying what it isn't, what it is not. I'm going to bring you some examples, historical examples, and then I'm going to give you some very basic practical tools. So, number one, let's see what leadership is not. Leadership is not being the boss. The boss is someone who is in charge. That's it, nothing else. Now, it helps when the boss has leadership skills. It makes him and his team more efficient, it brings better results. And it's best that he has leadership skills, but it's not the other way around. The boss is not, being the boss is not about leadership. Leadership is not about giving orders. Giving orders is about being the boss. And we just said that obviously being the boss is not leadership. Ordering people around, in fact, can bring, some questionable results, especially when we're talking about long-term. I mean, at some specific points in time, you might need to give some orders, and that's only momentary. But when we're talking about long-term and about leadership, that is definitely not an enduring leadership activity. Leadership is not about enforcing your view or opinion on your teammate, on your team members and others. If anything, it's like having blinders. At best, it's insulting to your team members because it's like telling them that they're not capable of forming their own opinion. So they need to adopt now yours because they don't have theirs. You're right, they're wrong. That's not leadership. Leadership is not about encouraging people to follow your specific path simply because that satisfies your self-interest and aspiration. That's not leadership. And in most cases, they're none. This leads people down the wrong path for the simple reason that that direction was not chosen in a very objective way. It wasn't for the common good. It was only for your own good. So let's see what leadership now is. Well, To begin with, leadership is about inspiring people. It's about inspiring them to do good and to better themselves. It's about showing people their potential and their possibilities and encouraging them to follow those and to better results for themselves and for the team. Leadership is about being inclusive. Inclusive in the decision-making process, inclusive in everywhere. When you're creating programs, many aspects of the team's cycle. It's about encouraging team members to voice their opinions, to help them analyze their problems and to come up with conclusions of their own. Is to allow them to reach constructive on their own solutions based on facts, not on hype, and making them feel that they too have contributed to the decision-making process. Leadership is about positive vibes and bringing the best out of people. It's about rising to the occasion and helping everyone raise the bar. And leadership is about responsibility. Responsibility for all the team's actions, both bad and good. Have your team members back. Leadership is about taking ownership of your team's actions, both good and bad, both in success and in the failures. Leadership is about standing in front of your members, your team members, and not behind them. Leadership means never pushing the buck down. Leadership is about supporting your team and your team members. It's about being there for them. It's about assisting them when they need help the most. It's about mentoring, guiding them. It's about encouraging them and truly helping them overcome the obstacles that they have in their environment, in their team environment. In a nutshell, leadership is about acting for the benefit of everybody else in your team but yourself. And that's the key. This is leadership in a nutshell. When I first wrote this speech, it was about a year ago. In fact, it was in the beginning of February 2016. And the events at the Capitol in the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. were very, very fresh. And where I went, it was actually, a club officers meeting in an online club officers meeting in Cyprus. I was asked to give a motto of my speech. And my motto was leadership is Biden, not Trump. So here, leaving politics aside and looking at that specific incident there, how two men reacted to those specific incidents is my very first example that I want to give you. And let's look at leadership right there. So, as you know, the day that officially Biden was supposed to be certified, the results of the elections were supposed to be certified in the U.S. Capitol. There was a rally in support of Trump, and Trump was there along with some of his advisors. And they gave a speech where they were encouraging people to go there and take back your government and go there and stop them doing this and stop doing that, which obviously instigated the incidents, and we know very well what the results were. Now, it so happened that that exact same week, Biden was introducing his cabinet ministers. So one day he would introduce his ministers, his Secretary of State and his team, and then the next one he was a Secretary of Finance and his team, and so on and so forth. And it just so happened that 2 days after the events, he had to present his justice team. Now, the U.S. Attorney General during the Trump administration was a vivid supporter of Trump, and actually, in fact, he was very much involved in the legal processes that Trump took in order to overtake, over the results. I forgot this word of the U.S. elections, to overturn the results of the U.S. elections. So when Biden came to that particular press conference in front of millions of viewers live on TV, he turned around to that team and he said, You do not work for me, you work for the US people. So with one speech, 2-minute speech, he basically, what he did is he set the tone for his administration. He turned around and he brought the credibility of the Justice Department back to the pre-Trump era. So in one word, here we have Trump, who obviously he rallied the troops and the result was a very negative result. And then we had Biden, which in 2 minutes, he overturned all that and he rectified, you know, the credibility of the Justice Department that for the past 2 months was stained. The second historical event that I want to show you is obviously the one in World War II. We have Hitler. For his own aspirations, he led an entire nation down a path of destruction to its ultimate defeat. Let's now look at Churchill now. Churchill, with very few resources, with a nation that had hardly been hit, that had been hit hardly but from the Germans, with one single speech and then with actions after that, okay, as in we will never surrender and so on and so forth, he rallied not only an entire nation, but the entire Western world against the Nazis and won at the end, won World War II. I know that those two are definitely, those are examples of political examples, but let's look at the business world. Two leaders. The first one, Steve Jobs, 1985, Apple fires him. Apple goes down a spiral downward path, all the way to almost being about 4% of the market share. Its market value had dropped down to less than $8 per share. And here comes in the late 90s, Steve Jobs. And basically what he did is that he showed an unprecedented leadership in the creative and technology departments. He inspired them to create excellent technologies on one hand. And he took those technologies, he marketed them, and then he created an entire brand based on customer loyalty. Apple users are the most loyal in the entire world. And then we have Gordon Bethune, who is the CEO of Continental Airlines. When he took over in 1994, Continental, one of the hugest airlines in the US history, was obviously, you know, down a downward trajectory. They were losing millions. And in fact, passengers were actually rating this airline poorly on customer satisfaction. They were like at the bottom of the of all the polls that were conducted. Now he came in and he did what? He first of all took the company management and he improved them. He improved their positions, he changed the few, and he improved the company management. And then he cultivated a specific relationship between the management and the workforce. And the workforce now felt that they were part of building something good, and that paid off dividends. Continental Airlines is being recognized as one of the greatest comebacks histories in aviation history. So let's look at some practical tools now. Okay, so you understand what great leadership is and what great leadership is not. I've told you a few examples. How can you apply them in your own leadership position? Well, let's look at it. Number one, you have to be objective with your team. You have to assess each member's possibilities regardless of their personality. There's people that they're allowed, others are shy, others you know, have all different traits. Somebody can be singing all day and he's, you know, just, you know, busting your ears with his singing tune. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you have to put all that aside and you have to really look at the value of that person and look at that person's strong points. Identify those strong points and let them know what they are. Tell them, you know what, you're good at that. Use that. Improve on that. And then you have to help them improve on everything else that needs to be improved. So you have to show them basically by starting with the most obvious thing that they can improve on and letting them know in a very specific way how in fact they can improve that. Not only just telling them to improve it, but show them. Use examples of your own personal experience. It doesn't have to be your own story, really, or 100%, because you're giving an example. You know what? When I was, in that company, I was doing that. And then along came a supervisor and he showed me a better way. And I improved on that. And guess what the result was? The result was that. So be very specific. Number 2, set objectives. You have to be specific with your objectives. You need a roadmap to show your team and your team members a roadmap, how to get from point A to point B that you're traveling, and define that specifically. Without a roadmap, you're just a team going nowhere, somewhere, anywhere. But you don't know if you're going to get where you're supposed to get if you don't carve out a specific roadmap that we're going to do this first, we're going to attain this goal, and then we're going to go to the next goal, and we're going to attain this goal, and so on and so forth, and this objective and that goal, and we're going to reach that point. Number 2 is that this setting objectives is that they have to be attainable. Okay, you have to adjust the pace according to the strengths of the team. We said before that you have to identify your team members' strengths. Okay, according to those strengths, you have to adjust the speed of those attainable goals. You can't just have them, just working year round, like, 24/7, just simply, to get to the goals, to get from point A to point B. You need to give them time. Honda, who created Honda, once said that the best managers go at home at 5 p.m., saying that, you know what, after 5 p.m., there's a different life, and then you come fresh in the morning and you continue on. And it goes like that speed. That's a particular pace, and you have to define that pace. The objectives have to be measurable. Okay, they must know in numbers how they are performing, your team members. They must understand that what you're giving them, the roles that you're giving them, okay, that in fact, they can measure their performance. Without that, they don't understand how they're doing, and that always leads to dissatisfaction. But when they attain goals and they know exactly where they are at with measures, with measurable numbers and so on and so forth, then they can adjust that. They can say, oh, good, I'm doing well here. Or no, you know what? I need to speed this up. I need to do better. And of course, you have to recognize them, recognition. You got to reward them for accomplishing objectives. That's very important for them to understand that you understand that they accomplished their objectives. Tip number 3, cultivate a team culture. You have to, in order to cultivate a team culture, you have to, first of all, define roles clearly. So they have to have very clear job descriptions. They have to know exactly what they're doing, and it has to be clear cut. It has to be defined specifically. There cannot be any gray areas as to what they're doing and how they're doing it. It has to be very clear cut. You have to clarify their working connections between the team members. So you have a team, you have defined each one individual's role, okay? And now you're coming back and you're telling them how these roles interconnect with each other. So now they know how I connect with the person next to me. How does my role affect their role? You have to bring them together socially. Take them out for a coffee. or drink or beer, whatever it is allowed in your setting. Okay, but connect them socially, because when there are some social bonds in teams, they, you know, they come together even better and they perform better. And most importantly, you have to define common goals. I have to know with my next team member next to me what our common goal is. And with you and you and you and you, that we are all in a team. Without that, we're just individuals going for our own thing. But we don't know, we don't have, if we don't have common goals, you know, we can't go together to achieve going from point A to point B, completing that roadmap that we said in the beginning. Tip number 4, and finally, it's leading by example. You have to include yourself in the entire team's effort. You cannot exclude yourself. You have to address everything by we, not you, we. Do not exclude yourself, include yourself. Okay. You have to admit your mistakes and correct them. Every single person makes mistakes in this world. It's impossible not to make mistakes. In fact, you can't learn if you don't make mistakes. That's the process of learning, by making mistakes. Okay. And so you have to be very quick in admitting them right away. Oh, that's wrong. Eh? Yeah, okay. Well, let's do it. Let's change it in that case. Let's correct it right away. You don't have to think about it, because the next mistake is going to come in next tomorrow or the day after, and you're going to have to correct it anyways too. You just if you make a mistake, just admit it, correct it, move on. They will understand too that it's okay to correct themselves, because a lot of people are defensive on that and they continue on doing the same mistake simply because they don't want to admit their mistakes. And finally, embrace and inspire them. Okay, leading by example means that you're embracing your team. Okay, you're inspiring them. You want them to do better for themselves first, for the team second, and for you last. And those, in a nutshell, is leadership demystified. I hope that you learned something today, that I was able to show you something today. And of course, I'm open to any kind of questions that you have. Padelis, back to you.
Thank you very much, Bill. That's really very to the point. I really enjoyed that in such a short time, you managed to give us the essence of leadership and also really practical examples. I really like the last one, that you need to walk the talk, actually, admit your mistakes. I think that's very important, because usually when we are leaders, we have leaders that try to pass on an image that, hey, you know what, I make no mistakes or something like this. But if they don't do that, if they maybe expose themselves and say, yes, I did the mistakes, this is also where the team bonding and the real leadership connection to the team, I think, is built. But hey, let's have some questions. Anyone? Yes, Elena, please. Elena, you raise your hand.
Sorry, it was by mistake.
Okay. Someone might
See,
like
she
to
admitted her mistake. Correct
yes.
it, move on. That's it. It's as simple as that.
So let's have some questions. I know in this call we have leaders.
Bill, I got a quick question. Bill, what do you think the most important aspect of workplace leadership is? If you were to pick one thing and say that's the most important.
You have to be objective with your team. Very objective. Okay. You have to cut to the chase, leave out all the information that really don't really have anything to do with performance, and really get down to the nitty-gritty and be very objective, you know, with your team in all aspects. Thank you for your question. Great question.
I see Mian that raised the hand. Mian?
Yeah. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So, Bill, when you were introducing about the leadership, you said that it's very important to contribute, but why you excluded the myself, for example, from the benefit of the team? So I consider if I want to have the leadership, I need to consider about the other team members in the team. But how about myself? Am I not part of the team?
Yes, that's a very good question. But, and I would like to answer it in this way. Being a team leader is that you have in your hands the responsibility of the entire team's effort. So if the entire team performs well, you come out as best. And I said it something like about at the end that, everybody has to perform better. You have to inspire everybody to perform better, first for themselves, second for the team, and only third for yourself. So in other words, and you as a team leader, you are performing well and you're doing exactly that. You are performing better. You are accomplishing what you're just saying by, in fact, inspiring and about showing and about guiding the rest correctly, the rest of the team members through correct leadership skills to perform best and optimally and as best as they can, and attain and achieve their objectives. So when the objectives are achieved, you are the team leader, so therefore that's your benefit, the results of the team.
How about, sorry to interrupt, maybe as a follow-up to the great question from Ian, how about the kind of own, let's say, health maybe, or own, well-being of the leader? Like usually you are a leader and you need to be there for everyone, maybe also work overtimes, whatever. So you really forget about yourself. You don't take care of yourself. You more are a full-time servant for your team. So do we need a balance there? Because maybe maybe as a third, as you said, 1, 2, 3, but still you need to take care of yourself. I remember you said something about leaving 5 o'clock or something like, hey, you also need to
Say
stop.
that,
Or
yes. Basically, I
so
was
could you
going
give
to
us some insights on that? Thank you.
Yes, I was going to say that. Actually, in fact, you said that, not being a servant to anybody. A leader is not a servant to anybody. Actually, no, it's, in fact, a leader is a leader. He's not a servant. And in fact, that's the demystification, is that in fact, in leadership, you're basically, your task actually is to make everybody else perform best. But that's your task. You're accomplishing your own objectives by making everybody else perform best. That's leadership. Now, as far as yourself and as your well-being, of course, there's a very specific reason why when you enter into an airline, when they show you in the beginning, the air stewardesses come up and they show you how, what happens in cases of emergency and whatnot. They say actually that when if ever that oxygen mask falls, and you need to put it on, you're supposed to first put on your own mask before you put your child's on. And the reason is that if you don't put on your mask, you might faint and not be able to help your child. So in order to help your child, you need to first put on your own mask so you can be alive and then help your child, so you don't lose your own senses. So you can understand that obviously it's a difficult thing for a parent, but leaders are in the same way. Of course, you don't neglect yourself, but I was only referring to what you are telling, your team members. It's the approach towards your team members, that those team members, they themselves have to look first for their own development, and then the team's development second, and only last the leader's development. Nothing to do with you and your personal health.
So that was very informative, addressing all these important topics on the leadership and the practical examples. So thank you very much once more, Bill. That was really great.
Thank you.